RWBY Volume 4, World of Remnant, Episode 1, Atlas. So this is technically the beginning of the fourth volume. They did this to me last season, so I never know if I should call it the Volume 4 premiere or what, but because I consider World of Remnant its own thing, tomorrow is going to be the actual premiere of Volume 4 as far as I'm concerned. We get our teams back and everything. I'm going to get off track if I talk about how excited I am. But, as always, I love the World of Remnant episodes. We got to hear about Atlas, which is one of my favorite things to talk about because at this point we really still don't know anything about this world. It's the world of Remnant. We got our academies, we have our kingdoms and all that stuff. It's like the schools are the most important thing that we really learn about. So that's why World of Remnant is important. We get the actual history of this world, and it was pretty cool. I like this one. Huge change, which I love that they did this. I didn't think about it honestly until just now. But it was awesome hearing Crow. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, that's a twist, because normally it's Ozpan. And I didn't think about it until I was just now talking. I was like, oh, I know why it's not Ozpan anymore because of lore. So that should be interesting, this volume. Who knows if that's going to change. It's hard to guess because things clearly got serious at the end of the last volume. So I don't know how successful things are going to be this volume, if it'll go back to normal, by the time we hit volume 5, if it'll be Ozpan again, or what the case may be. It might not even be Crow again. Who knows? It made me sad a little. But this was really cool. I was like, I like the change. It fits with the lore of the actual volume, which I never even thought would be considered for World of Remnant. I just thought they just chose the voice actor of Ozpan because he just has a good voice for doing narration. So it's cool that they actually changed it to fit with lore. I never considered that would even be an option for the series. But that was the first thing I thought was pretty cool. It was a cool little change of pace. Fits with the lore, so that makes it even cooler. And then just them talking about Atlas, I thought was cool. They talk about how Mantle was the original name for the kingdom because that's where everyone started at. And then as things change, they make this little, academy. And it's like, you know what? After the Great War, let's build up the academy to basically bring in people who want to give back, as it said. And so once that started to happen, it's like, this happens to be really good. Let's build upon this. And so eventually they just built it up so much, it wasn't even just the school. It was literally the kingdom now built around this school. It just happened to become such a big thing that they made it the most important thing basically in that part of the land. And I thought that was interesting because it's like, wow, it's not like something simple where it's like, oh, this was, like in the States here, for people who might be watching this in other countries, we have capitals and stuff. We have our capitals, and it's like, okay, that's the capital of this state, capital of that state. And at first when they were talking about it, I was like, oh, so they kind of just changed the capital because Atlas became more important. It just became bigger than Mantle. And I was like, okay, that seems like a normal thing. It just became much more than they expected. And before he kind of explained everything, I was like, oh, so they all kind of just moved. And it's like, no, some people did. And then Mantle was kind of left in the dust, no pun intended. But they were just left behind and almost forgotten because it's like, oh, that's like the history of how Atlas began. But Atlas is now, and the past is done. That's pre-Great War stuff as well. So that's based on this, it's always the Great War. So it's like pre-Great War, it has to be a long effing time ago. So I thought that was cool. I was like, okay, that makes it a bit darker, and that makes it a bit more entertaining as well, because it's not just, oh, this is popular now, so this is the place that, this is the name for it. This is the name for this, it's a giant patch of land. It's that the importance, and I would assume the wealthy people as well, which, Weiss and I would assume Winter as well as their father might be involved in, those people kind of took off. It was like, oh, well, this is the next safest place outside of Mantle, so that's where we'll mine and things like that. Like I said, it starts off really simple, and then it just becomes this grandiose thing that they were never expecting it to be, and it's like, oh, well, you guys shouldn't settle there, and so many people left, but there's someone still in Mantle, there are people still there. And it's just interesting. It's like, they don't really go into specifics, but it's like, this became such an important thing. And of course it's a map, so it's like, oh, it's from here to here, it seems like nothing, but that's a huge distance. And they don't, they mentioned that the weather actually helps with Grimm, which I thought was pretty cool. It seems that they're naturally susceptible to ice and stuff. So I just thought that was pretty cool. But it doesn't mean that there are no Grimm. So I thought that was interesting as well. I was like, okay, they took off from Mantle and went to Atlas, and it became the kingdom. But those people, some of those people are still there, you know, generation after generation, and eventually, someone who someone who was at least in the bloodline of like one of the original settlers, their family used to be like super rich and stuff because everyone was at Mantle, and now they're like, you know, middle class or maybe lower class because Atlas is now such a huge distance from what the kingdom used to be. And it's a lot of economical stuff that just, you know, they don't talk about it, but it's like, it's all in there and you can kind of tell. So I really enjoyed this one. It was a nice one. Of course, I mean, basically every location they talk about is something brand new. So it was a really cool one. I like this one, and they actually didn't talk nearly as much about the actual wealth of Atlas as I was expecting, because based on our characters, it's the rich military place, and they talk more about the military side than they do about the actual kind of like the economic stuff. That's what I was thinking of, mostly because of like Weiss and her sister and how prim and proper they are, and they have this and that, and of course the Schnee Dust Company. So you have stuff like that where it's like, obviously that economical side is there, they just didn't talk about it too much in this episode. But it was really cool to have that, and then have them really talk about why it changed. It was, you know, it was dust. That's how Mantle began. And then Atlas, I would assume, you know, they had so many people, they could do more mining than they could in Mantle, because they were bringing in a ton of different people to this location. They were like, you know, Atlas was like the tourist place a little bit after the Great War, and then Mantle was still just like, oh, well, we don't need to go there. This is, you know, the academy. So they have more people and more resources, so it's like, well, let's just build around this instead of the people that are already here. Let's build around the place where people are coming to, and that leaves the original people behind. And it's just interesting. The people that were at the top, like the Schnees, who I'm sure were there, like some of the original settlers, those people were already so high up as far as being rich. Like one of those three, you know, color characters, everyone else is like, you know, shades of black. But you have like a blue character, a green character, and a white character, which may or may not have some very serious significance to actual characters in the show. I would assume the character that was in all white would be a Schnee. But those top three people were already so rich because they were the first ones there, or the first ones to actually kind of make a move, I guess. So they took off instantly, like, oh, this is growing, let's get out of here. And then, you know, that sort of thing where the, you know, cut off the head and the rest of the body falls, that's sort of economical, from an economical standpoint. So I thought it was interesting. I thought it was really fun to kind of hear that. Once again, the Great War, like I said, you know, it's a long time ago. It's mentioned, no real specifics as to what it was about, because they mentioned, you know, Mantle was there pre-Great War, and it was involved in the Great War, but why? It was like these people basically colonized the abandoned place that no one wanted to go to, and yet somehow they still managed to end up being involved in the Great War. So I really want to know what the deal was with that, because like, why in the world would these people even remotely be involved in it? Although they do mention the fact that they kind of grew really, really quick, so maybe they kind of started the war. It's certainly possible, because that's how they act in the actual series, even in the, you know, present. It's like, you know, big shows of force. We're the army nation. You know, their whole thing is not a school. They are an army. You know, they have an academy, but it's more military than anything else. So maybe it was their fault. Who knows? But I really enjoyed this first episode. Very excited to get to learn more about it. You know, the world of Remnant and her characters. I don't know if they'll finally get into specifics on characters. I think they might leave that for the main series, so we can get, you know, flashbacks and this and that and exposition. But I am excited. I'm excited to see where we go with this. Maybe we'll get, you know, some lessons on like possibly historic characters within the universe, because that's something that's like the one big thing I feel is kind of missing in the series. There's never really been like historical figures in this universe. It's like, you know, we have like the statue at Beacon. That's like the closest we have to like historical figures, because those people are like actual descendants, or Jean is like an actual descendant of those people, and that's really it. That's about as close as I can think, at least, you know, off the top of my head, of like even remotely historical figures within this universe. So I'd kind of like something on that. Maybe that'll kind of start being brought up. You know, I can't call him a historical figure, but whoever was like leading the White Fang when Blake was young, and she mentions like, oh, he was a great leader and stuff. Can't call him historical, but there's no one who's really like historically important in this universe that I can really think of. So I would love it if they started to add that to the universe, where it's like these people are descendants of this specific person and stuff like that. Like, I guess the Schnee Dust Company is really the closest we have, where we have descendants of clearly like the richest family on the entire planet. So I guess that's about it, but maybe we'll start getting into stuff like that, historical figures that either started the Great War, big figures that ended the Great War, names for people that maybe discovered dust and things like that. That might be going like way too far back, but I don't know, like just names of people who may or may not be dead, because I don't know what this woman is going to be doing, you know, in this current volume, but I would assume based on her face that, and her location, I don't think she's the actual devil, but clearly that was the point, was like she looks like she's straight up in hell and like she's lived forever. So I don't know what her deal is, but we'll find out this volume. But I definitely want to know what you guys thought about this technically first episode of Volume 4, and of course the first episode of the World of Remnant that we've had for quite some time. So please comment below, let me know your favorite parts about this, your least favorite parts about it. Of course, with this being a new volume, we're probably going to get new backstories based on, you know, really big things. Like we had the story of the Four Maidens, because that was introduced in the last volume. Like, oh, these are the maidens, they have this power and that power. And then we got the story of the Four Maidens. So I think we might get something at least somewhat similar for our new villain. I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but maybe we'll get something similar for her, and possibly her connection to Osmond, because she seems like she has a bit of a connection to him. So maybe we'll get something on that. Maybe we'll get a backstory on, I just thought of this as well, because they showed it off in the finale. Maybe we'll get a backstory on characters that can turn into animals, because we have that with Crow and Raven. So I would love to get a backstory on that, because they may or may not be considered faunus. I would assume they aren't. They'd have to be considered something else, because they don't have the animal elements to them. Maybe that's a specific ability that they have. It's really hard to tell. You never know what's a semblance and what's something else, so we kind of just have to wait and find out the answer. But maybe we'll get that this season. Like, this is that classification of species, you know, on this planet, people that can turn into, you know, animals. So far we of course only have the Crow and the Raven, so I'm excited to see even more of that in the actual volume anyway. Like, I want to see new characters get introduced. Maybe not. I kind of want to, because they always have just cool costumes and weapons, and they always make cool new characters. But we have, like, I feel 8 dozen characters that we still don't know anything about. So I kind of want new people, but we saw like a million different teams. Any of those people could turn into animals. They could just throw it at one of them, and it's like, fine, we don't need someone brand new to do it, but somebody new will come up. But anyway, I want to know what elements of the series you guys want to see done in this season's or volumes, World of Remnant episodes, what you guys might want to get a little extra info on that we've gotten a little bit, you know, a bit of a taste of before in previous volumes. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.